She's on the farm machine on. And we were doing that all right for about 5 years.
No, 6 years at Ricard.
6 years at Ricard. Made a reasonable living.
And I did a bit of raspberry picking for the local Coleman had raspberries, about an acre or something. And another lady and I, we used to go and pick raspberries. We used to get about five pits those days. Would be like a sixpence would be. About a sixpence a pound or something, you know. They used to weigh them after you filled your basket. And then a Dutchman, who was the milkman, he grew, what were they, gladiolas. And 2 or 3 of us ladies used to go there once a year and skin all the bulbs after they finished flaying. We would have to take all this outside stuff off the bulbs and clean them and that, and he'd put them away and then he'd replant them later on in the year. I did that. You didn't get much money, but it was a bit of pocket money.
That's the lady next door.
Oh, there's Ford. There's Ford.
Is the dog at the door?
Yeah, he's right here.
Let him in and see what he has.
Hi,
40.
Hi, Ford.
What are you doing?
Where you been? Where have you been? I haven't seen you for a long time. Has you been a good boy? Have you?
Hello.
Who's been to kindy today?
Hello.
You feeling the heat, 40?
He is today.
Yeah.
You're a good boy, aren't you? Yeah. You haven't come to see me for a long time, have you?
I've got asked you. How much do you owe your husband for doing that hedge?
Oh, $1 million ought to be square.
A what?
$1 million? No, nothing at all. Don't be silly. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
You were selling
yeah, I used
bulbs
to
or
do
seeds or
the
something?
bulbs. That was all I did. Just got a wee bit of extra pocket money. Oh, and I used to go down to Sutherland's. Yes, Ken went to school. He used to come home with a school bus, and when they were doing their lambing, I used to go down and look after
in the farm.
the youngest, wasn't it?
Lindsay.
Lindsay. No, not Lindsay.
Stuart.
Stuart was the youngest. He was just about a year or something. I used to go down and look after him and do a bit of housework in there. And then when they shifted, they had a strawberry farm. Because I used to go and pick strawberries. Oh, what a job. Apart from that, that was all I did at Ricard.
I was a member of in fact I was a member of the Volunteer Fire Brigade at Ricard. And I was really the acting fire chief too. We had about 12 or 14 members. And one morning it was slight snow and blowing a southerly, and the southbound express went through. That was a steam engine pulling it. And at the Chertsey crossing, that's just down below Ricard, a petrol wagon went across, a big petrol wagon. It wasn't small, it was a big petrol wagon, couldn't pull up at the crossing for the snow and the ice, and slithered into the crossing, and just as the express was there, and the express couldn't stop. And there was 2 firemen and a driver on the express, and one of them got seriously burnt with petrol fumes coming back into the cab of the express. It pulled up about a quarter of a mile down the track, and it just shows you how stupid people can be in cars. Like, they all pulled up at the crossing. The tanker was there and it was breathing flames out the vent pipes of the main fuel tank or petrol tanker, and they were crowding all around it, and we couldn't, under any circumstances, they just didn't want to see it. They wouldn't go away from the thing, and it could have exploded.
Didn't the
Burned
far-
about 100 of them.
yeah, didn't the farmer lose his ears or nose?
The fireman in the express, he lost his ears and his part of his nose and that with flames.
What was the cause?
The
It
crash.
was the cause of the thing was the petrol tanker going south on the road couldn't pull up at the crossing for the snow and ice on the crossing area.
The train was going.
And the train, the southbound express, was just almost opposite him.
So what year was this?
About 1965, I think. 64 or 65. I'm not just sure of the time. There's an article of it somewhere, but it just showed what happens when the express or any train had hit an object like it did. It just, phew.
Every summer you used to get all the trains, because they were all steam trains those days, and look at all the forest and plantations that you had to get out
Yeah.
to at night and that.
Time and time again there was fires, especially in the summertime and that. The express engines and the ordinary locos and everything, they had ash pits or whatever you like to call them underneath the boilers, ashtrays, ash pans, and sometimes they'd leak and they'd roll out of there and onto the dry grass, and the next thing the side of the railway line was on fire. That was quite common. Rakaia River was a good river for catching salmon in those days.
So is it still got the same number of fish there, or is it being fished out largely? Or?
It's not the fish today.
I think the competitions on the.
They don't have them now, they haven't got enough.
There's not enough salmon to say there was 100 or so went in for the competition, and out of that 100, there'd be 300 or 400 salmon caught for the day. Well, what we call breeding salmon, female salmon, there was nothing there to fill the place of the outgoing salmon.
They wouldn't get them now, that's why they stopped fishing.
Well, they stopped all those competitions and
They
everything.
don't have any now, do they? Not even
I don't think they
an
do.
Oamaru. I think they seemed to think, didn't they, that the Japanese boats were boats out from the coast, you know, the way out. They used to get all the fish before they even made the rivers, didn't they?
That's right.
One time they used to sit out there, these big fishing boats.
They must have. They must go pretty far out to sea then, the salmon.
They actually don't know where they go to. The common thought is up around the Hawaiian, not the Hawaiian Islands, and up, what's the United States?
The West Pacific coast. Or?
Canada,
No, not Canada.
Mexico.
No, the islands where the aircraft used to call it.
Midway, are they?
Hawaii,
Hey, Honolulu.
Honolulu. We think they go into that area there, but we're not. Nobody's sure. We'd have to think about that.
So, so we also involved with the development of the dam, the hydro projects up there in central. I should say up in.
After we lived for a few years at Rakaia, things were
We
getting
shifted when Ken was 10. The day he was 10, we shifted.
there was an ad in the paper wanted a husband and wife team to cook and worked mechanical wise for Wilkins and Davies, supplying the aggregate gravel to the Aviemore Dam. And we went and seen them about it and we got the job. We shifted from Rakaia down to Aviemore in North Otago,
It's all underwater.
and it's all underwater now, the lake. And for Wilkins and Davies. And after a year or so, there was a better proposition come up there, working for the hydro people, the New Zealand Electricity Department. They were servicing generators and main turbines and all the rest of it. And we worked a few years there, and
Three and a half there, wasn't it?
she run the hostel for them, Waitaki and Aviemore.
Were there any interesting people? Any particular, like any characters there when you're up there? Any?
Oh, just the Maori Lines people, the New Zealand, North Island Maori Lines people, they were,
That was the West Arm.
no, it wasn't, it was up there. They were servicing the main power lines back through to Livingston and servicing the main power lines north. And they were building those lines, and they were very interesting, you know, they had their own huts and everything there, and they were wonderful people. Thought nothing of heights, stringing these main conductors and cables across on the towers. And we done a few years on that, and I applied for a job.
No, we went to Aviemore Power Station.
I went to Aviemore Power
We
Station.
got built, and we were transferred there, and I ran the hostel there. For 13 months, I think we were there, when Manapori opened. And then we were both given jobs down there, and I ran the hostel there for 6 years.
At Manapori. We lived in at the hydro station at Manapori for 6.5 years,
I
right?
don't know if you see the big building.
From the time start-up took place till I got sick and we left.
Yeah, it was 6 years of that. And that's when your dad went to boarding school, when we went in there.
Went to the Waitaki Boys High.
And Easter school holidays, we used to have Dave Preston and Matt Liddell, a lot of the boys.
Matt
that
Sellers,
he
all
was
them.
at school with all came and used to stay in at West Arm. They used to go deer shooting and
They're all kids. Dave Preston, Matt Sellers,
Yeah, Dave,
Ewan
all
Maxwell.
we had them on the Milford track too. And Doug McBride and all them come through, and Glenys came through about 3 or 4 months before she had
Glenys
Kelly.
Cranston those days.
Yeah.
She married
No,
Alan
she
Taylor.
was married. She was expecting
Oh, Alan.
she was expecting Owen.
Oh, yeah.
When she walked through, she was about 5 months pregnant.
Yes, for 6.5 years we lived and toiled in at West Arm. I went there for the commissioning, and the Americans were more or less still in charge.
Oh, the camp was still there until we went in about August, and they didn't shift it.
1969 we went
And
there.
they all shifted out, like the whole camp, in about April. And the Wanganella went out in April. And all the camp, they burnt all the huts and buildings at the camp. We've got photos of all them somewhere.
Yeah, you're dead right.
Some of the boys came out from the under the tunnel there, didn't they? They took photos. I forget who it was took all the photos for you with the camera.
I don't know what that.
No, I can't remember.
But I got crook while I was in there, and I had to give the heavy work up.
Oh, we had a lot of staff. We had different staff. We used to have quite a bit of fun. And one of the men that worked in there, his wife worked with me, and he went out. Granddad bought a boat for the launch while we were there.
Oh, not a launch, runabout, 16-footer.
And we went, he went out to Manapori with Russell this day and brought back 2 baby pigs. And they made a bit of a, how they ever stayed in that, like unload, away up in the bush, because the parks would have found out when he got in trouble we called them Gert and Daisy. And when Russell and Jenny went out one weekend for the weekend off, we would go out the next weekend. And when they were away, we'd boil up tucker and take tucker up the road into the paddocks and that, and water and that for these pigs.
They were housed in the bush, in the forest, you know, native forest.
And then Russell was out. He went out one day and Jenny was there and she rang me up and she said, "Have a look out the window, Jenny." And here was the two pigs at the back door. They
Of the
must have
hostel.
followed with the food, you know, smell of the food up to the hostel. So Granddad, you were there and you got a bag of loaf of bread and we grabbed the tucker that we had to take up and you walked up the road feeding them a slice of bread all the time till we got them back into the bush. But it wasn't long after that Russell killed them and we ate the pig. Well, he took one out and he gave the hostel half and we had half. That was some of the funny things, you know, if the Parks Board knew we had them there, they'd be murdered. And then we had a pet possum, used to come along to, our flat was upstairs, but Jenny's flat was downstairs, off the kitchen. And we used to have and a possum used to come along there each night. And she used to open up the window and feed him biscuits, he liked, or carrots or something. And as soon as he had enough, he used to take the last biscuit away with him. Then be back again the next night, knock on the window and get another feed. Well, the Parks Board didn't even know there was any
The
possums
Parks Board
there.
swore black and blue. There's no possums in that area. They said, no, they're all been taken out, gone. I didn't like to tell them that they were wrong because we had a pet one.
Yeah, and I've got a photo with Jenny with that.
The Parks Board said
possum.
there was no deer in the area, no deer whatsoever. They've all been taken out. Oh, God.
Used to wake up in the morning and
Yeah.
head across the
Hear them,
river. There was a river that we used to have to go over a bridge to the hostel. And you go and look out. This is when we went there first. There might be 5 or 6 deer standing there.
oh, hell. The deer used to spar with one another with their antlers. And you could hear the antlers clicking and that. And we shot one or two on the road. And yet they swore black and blue that, there was never any deer or possums or anything there like that. Oh, the little run.
And then I had
I used to go fishing in my runabout to Deep Cove and then go way down 23.5 miles down to the open sea and catch blue cod down there at the,
you
what
had
they
a
call
tractor. He used to pull.
Here's ears. I had a little Ferguson tractor, pulled the trailer with the boat on it from West Arm over to Deep Cove. And when I wasn't using it, I had it stored at West Arm. And
We've
then
got
finished.
photos of it too.
I got very sick while I was in there, and anyway, they
Oh.
said it'd be better if and I had to go to hospital and had a major operation.
Did you have cancer at this point?
Yeah,
Oh,
but it was interesting. It was very, very interesting. I've got a lot of films in that one.
well, photos of everyone.
And it's a major undertaking. I worked mainly with the American engineer and that they commissioned the station. It was very interesting. But after 6.5 years in there, we made good money and we're always going to Australia or going somewhere when money was right.
It must take about 9 or 10 trips to us. Because we went with the gun club, the Spencer and Doris, to Adelaide, Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane
Yeah,
gun club.
Melbourne, one part of it. And the doctors just said, we think it's time we were both out of there.
So too isolated.
And
No, it wasn't bad. Work was a bit heavy, wasn't it? The four-year was too heavy. And they got us, the doctors saw the folk. They knew they were wanting somebody up at Quinton Hut, so
On the Milford track.
he was going through to Milford that day, and he must have asked, and the next thing they wanted us to start there, so we just handed in our notice and went up there for the season. But it's only for 6 months, and then you come home, went back again.
We went back again for another run. Very interesting, and who you meet and people walking the track. It's one of the wonders of the world, really.
So, what was that Hunter's Lodge you're telling me about?
Oh, what?
Yeah, there's a Hunter's Lodge up there.
Oh, that was run by Jugger Harold Clark, who's passed away. That was, we told you about that lodge.
Something large. Can't remember the name of it now, can you? Well, Ken might remember. Yeah, we only went in there for a weekend.
And, oh, what the hang. My memory just won't register at the moment on that name of that. Not Wayland's Lodge.
No, that's a cura.
Takaro.
Yeah, Tikara.
Takaro Lodge, and a chap, Harold Clark, was in charge of it in those days.
No,
but
that was when it was empty.
when it was empty.
After it had been sold, there was no one there. He was sort of caretaker, really.
Yeah. Takaro Lodge.
The American owned it. It's owned by is it Japanese Chinese now?
Japanese or Chinese?
Chinese, I think it is. Run a sort of a camp there, I think. Don't they? Yes, isn't it some, it's not a camp either. Or big wigs with a lot of money go there, don't they?
To find their souls, is it?
It's a religious thing, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, they come out. Yeah, they've got plenty of money, and I suppose they fish and go deer hunting and everything. They've got all that. thing.
Stockton Rush was the name of the
Yeah, he
owner.
was the chap that owned it, an American. He was very nice.
But the most interesting thing was we'd done a couple of years or a bit longer, I think, or 2 seasons, a bit longer than that, in a Quinton Hut on the
Yeah, we
Milford
did
track.
2 seasons.
And we were getting a house built at Karatani, on which we'd owned a section there for many years. And we got the house built at Karatani, and we more or less semi-retired there.
Yeah, well, we couldn't. We could have gone back to the track the next season, but the garden and everything would have all gone to pot, you know, while you were away for 6 months. But we made good money there because you didn't have to pay for anything, food, everything.
Good
was
money
supplied.
on the Milford track and meals.
Well, we only lived sort of in huts. It was just a lot of huts joined together and one lot
There
of
was
shelters for everyone.
Every day or every second day there was 50 walkers went through it for the Tourist Hotel
And
Corporation.
then a lot of staff. We used to cook for about 65 odd a day. There
And
weren't that many of us. There was about 5 or 6 guys.
so the job, we just said no, we won't go back again. And we lived at Rakai. We had had a home built there. Beautiful.
We didn't
city.
live at Rick.
Correction, Rakai. At
Karatani.
Karatani, we had a beautiful home there.
Yeah, well, Sam.
And one of the best jobs I ever had in my working life was what they call a boilerman, or running the boilers at Cherry Farm Psychiatric Hospital. It was very interesting, and it was shift work, but you were on your own, and it was very, very interesting, really, to see and talk to some of the patients. Some of them were ex-wartime patients, but the majority were in there for psychiatric attention. I can't think of anything else. The thing I loved doing was going out fishing out at sea with Barry Barber or Murray Roger. We used to catch.
Well, we had our boat up there.
I had my boat there for a while, and we had a trip to the United States, England, over into Norway and up to the land of the midnight sun, top end of Norway and round through Finland and all down through there. And
then we did went through about Germany and a night in Germany, and we went down to Austria and had 2 nights in Austria and 2 or 3 different places through there and a night in Paris.
went to a place called Mauthausen, and that was
That was in Austria.
in Austria. That was
We
a
left from Vienna on a day trip to go there.
yeah. And what was it? Mauthausen.
Prisoner of war.
It was
Concentration camp, wasn't
it
it?
was a concentration camp. Yes,
Did
built
they,
about 1934.
We went through there.
was it kind of established as a sort of a museum or a monument to the Holocaust?
Yeah,
Well, it's left there. Well, in our day when we went there and looked at it, it was left as it was found
So they didn't,
by the troops that I don't know whether it was English or American troops that took possession of it. But there was a lot of poor individuals there just lying there starving or almost starved to death. But I went down and had a look with another chap at the crematoriums. In there were 7 big ovens that they just,
There was one oven up on top.
yeah.
They had flowers, and one room had photos of all these ones that had been killed. And hundreds of photos, weren't there? And little flares beside them on the wall and that.
The SS and the German troops attached to that extermination thing, they done some terrible things to some of the patients. There's no question on that.
It showed you, didn't it, all different instruments they do, all in glass cases.
Oh,
The
yeah.
uniform, blue and white striped uniforms, and
Poor devils. It was horrible, really.
there was that monument where they, in memory of all the ones they'd murdered, froze to death.
There was 500 Russians, white Russians, captured and housed at Mauthausen. And the 500, they decided to escape, which they did. And the next few days they were rounded up, brought back to Mauthausen and hosed down
In the middle
with
of
fire hydrant hoses, or fire hoses, and hosed down until they were frozen solid. And that's as true as we sit here. 500 of them. There's a there's a memorial stone and a service there to them.
And the huts, how they slept on those bunks, we had 5 or 6 in these bunks, and they were no wider than this. Weren't they? They were terrible. And then we went down that, into that cave where the Germans built their aircraft. And you went down,
That was a jet aircraft.
like going into a coal mine, and they had the, tunnel with the rails down, and you walked down there with a little light on, and when you got in there, it had all been flooded. It was just like a big lake, and they took you around on a boat, didn't they?
Yeah.
Around there, and that was where they built all these.
Where they started building the jet aircraft and things like
Took
that.
them out in bits through there. And then we went to the, was it the Black Forest or something, to that Catholic monastery. Remember I got those glasses with the horses on.
Yeah, the riding
and
school.
I got a liqueur for Doris there.
Yeah, we went to the, what was that riding school?
Oh yes, the riding school with all the white horses and that in Austria. Famous riding school.
is it for dressage or?
It was dressage,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Oh yes, it's world famous, and there are all these white horses, and in this massive, huge big building, and we went in and seen, had an air in there watching, going through all their performers. Oh, they're beautiful. These Australian Oscars.
That was at
That was and just before we got into it was in Austria, but it was before we got into Vienna, wasn't it?
yeah.
I think. Or it could have been going into Vienna.
What was the name of that riding school? It was really in the early days a Russian riding school, wasn't it?
It's real famous. I don't know if it's got it written on those glasses or not that I bought. Oh, I forget what they call them. It's real famous.
But
It's
we went
there
back.
all the time.
We went back to England after one trip we done was up into Norway, Sweden,
Doesn't
and Finland, and all around there, and that took about a fortnight,
it? 18 days that was.
18 days, and the other one was 9 or 10
9
days.
or 10, none, I think.
And we came back, and then we went up to Scotland.
Yeah, when your father was working in Scotland, we went up there. And then we went over to Ireland. We stayed with this chappie. He was worked at Manapori. He was a troubleshooter for.
Oh, he was
pumps.
the engineering troubleshooter.
And he stayed at our hostel for 2 or 3 months while they were working on these pumps and that. And we went over and stayed with him in Scotland. And they took us all around different places in Scotland, St Andrews and over to Oban and all around. And then we had a week with him, and then we went up to Sherlock, up where Ken was, Kinley.
Yeah.
And we had stayed in the hotel there, and the pilot of the helicopter took us for a trip all over the loch and all up there. And then they shifted on over to the Isle of Skye. We went over to the Isle of Skye, stayed a couple of nights in a bed and breakfast place. And they took us for another big helicopter trip all around. And some of them were living in a caravan. I used to go and cook meals for them. And then we left there, we went to St Andrews. We stayed at one night at a ski resort called Aviemore. And we stayed there, and then we went on down to St Andrews, where we stayed with people we knew. And then we had a couple of days or something there, and then we went back down to Hughes at Dollar again.
Yeah.
And then
Hugh Stenhouse was his name.
Yeah, and then we went to, we got a train into Glasgow, and we went down to a place called Stranraer and caught the ferry across to Northern Ireland, to Larne. And we stayed 3 or 4 days at Larne with a millionaire and his wife, actually. They had a big farm there.
They took us round where
It
all
was
the
her
trouble
farm.
was with the Northern Islanders and the shootings and the explosives and everything. And we actually heard that shooting and those explosives going off at night in some places. We actually heard them. That was in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, they wouldn't stop on the,
They wouldn't stop in front of
streets
a police station or anything like that.
in case you got shot at.
If you stopped there, the police or the constabulary of Ireland, they would shoot and ask questions afterwards. You didn't stop.
So, and then we came back, and they wanted us to stay. The Pope was arriving in Ireland, and they wanted to stay. They were Catholics, people we stayed with, and they wanted us to wait and go, but we promised Ken we'd be back in Scotland. He was going to ring us, and that was before we went up in a helicopter in the Isle of Skye. And we went to a place called Kaya Tesh, just above where we were staying in the hotel. And we watched the Pope arrive remember in that shop that had big television, an electrical shop. And we stood in there and watched the Pope arriving at Belfast.
Is that Pope John Paul II?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And that was when
That was his first trip.
That was when the present king, you might say, his father got assassinated that day, didn't he?
No.
Was it
wasn't.
Mountbatten?
It was
Mountbatten was assassinated.
Mountbatten.
Yeah, I think what day
We
was it?
stayed at Stirling. We had gone. Ken took us to what was the castle?
Carla T-shirt.
No,
Oh, well,
no.
okay.
We're the king and queen. And
Oh,
he was killed that day, and we were still staying down with Mary, down in Mary and John
yeah.
in Wiltshire, and we watched the funeral service and that on TV. That was Mountbatten, Windsor Castle. Ken took us to Windsor Castle. We went through part of Windsor Castle.
That's it, more or less in London, isn't it?
Yes, out of London.
But Ken and the crowd he was with, they had helicopters and they were sowing
Lime and stuff went up the tree.
likes of superphosphate, where trees had been planted for regeneration. And these trees, there was thousands and thousands of acres, and they were experimenting with the growth, and they reckoned that trees breathed and left fresh air and all the rest of it. They were trying to prove this, the scientists. And he was there with a helicopter crew, sowing what would we call super or something like that,
Something like that. Lime was.
with these helicopters. And it was for centuries to follow. The scientists would keep track of them and see if it could be improved for the Clean Air Act and all that sort of business. It was very interesting, really. But the helicopter pilot, we know him, and he looked after us. A lot of fun. But when we finished in England, Scotland and Ireland, we came back down to London and had a night or two there, and then boarded an aircraft to go
To Hong Kong.
to Hong Kong, and the first stop was in Germany for fuel.
Yeah, we stopped. Frankfurt was the first
Frankfurt.
stop, and then we stopped at Bombay. But before we got to Bombay in India, we stopped at oh, Lord.
Don't worry about it.
No, not. We did stop at the Philippines, but we stopped somewhere else before that in
We had a few.
Thailand. We stopped in Bangkok, and we got off the plane there. Well, you didn't. You sat at we got off and walked around, and then we went to. We stopped in India, Bombay. Then we went to Hong Kong. When we left Hong Kong, we landed in the Philippines and refueled, and then we went right through to Sydney.
That's right.
And we stayed
Because
half a day.
you couldn't get
stayed
into
there.
the airports in some of the places for massive typhoons and that. So we done Hong Kong down to Manila, and Manila to straight to Sydney. And I think we spent the night in Sydney, didn't we?
No, we spent half a day. We got there about 6 in the morning, and we spent left at dinner time, and went to Auckland, and we missed our connecting plane, and they got us from down as far as Wellington
That's
from
right.
Auckland, and we stayed the night in Wellington, and then we came down to Christchurch the next day, and we couldn't. The planes, it was a Labour weekend, and we couldn't get a plane. And we asked and took a rental car, and they refunded us our train money, but we paid to take the rental car back.
We drove a rental. I drove a rental from
To
Christchurch to
Dunedin.
Dunedin here.
And Maid car met us there and took us back
Yeah,
to
but
Canberra.
halfway down, up
No.
above Glenavy,
Yeah.
I had to go and have a sleep. I went to sleep on the side of the road. I just had to pull up and have a sleep. And I had 40 minutes of shut eye, and I was right.
We had to be And then
In here.
by 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock in the
And
afternoon.
we popped into Karatani, May and Kai were there, weren't they? We went into Karatani and unloaded all our gear, and you went into town and May and Kai brought you back out and stayed.
Yeah. That was one of the good trips.
You were about 6
But
weeks.
quite a number, in latter life, quite a number of trips to Australia, Perth and Brisbane, with the New Zealand Gun Club or whatever, but over to my brother,
Alice Springs,
Alice Springs on the
2
Ghan,
or 3 days there.
and flew into Alice Springs and come out on the Ghan.
What's he doing up on the roof of that house?
Who?
Someone with a hose up on the top of Fred's house. Looks like a hose, doesn't it? Or a cable. What's he putting on?
Is that in Fred's house?
Yeah.
Oh, they'll be putting cables in for his radio or something.
No, there's some big yellow thing he's pulling along. Yeah. No. He's pulling it all along and looping it over his hand. He's walking along the ridge at the top.
That could be a measuring tape, is it?
Hell no. You know, I think it's like a garden hose, isn't it?
Looks like some form of cord.
Well, is that a tiled roof or is it?
Tiled.
Tiled roof.
Yeah, he might be getting them water blasted.
Well, we can't see what he's doing down there.
Well, don't be nosy.
We can't
Record that.
help but see him. He's walking along he's going down the side now on the ladder, but he's left the hose thing up on the chimney, wrapped it round, must go and get something out.
In those days when the money was on trees, as we used to talk about, we'd go anywhere. We had some marvellous trips to Australia, north and south and east. It was really interesting.
Yes, we stayed at Kalgoorlie for 2 or 3 days. We got a free trip. Uncle Jack worked for a bus company and gave us a free trip over to Kalgoorlie and back. And that's miles away. And we knew 2 lots of people there. We had, remember the Tompkins? We had a meal there one night. We went to Laws,
Yeah.
John, Patty.
Went underground and had a look at the mines.
Oh, that's right. That was at Kalgoorlie. I forgot about that. Oh, I was terrified. Going down in this little lift of pitch black. And then they had lights all around. You could see all the gold. Seams of gold all in the
And
walls.
the seams of
The gold. Remember one part they took us in that you couldn't get at it, but there was in that sort of tunnel, and here was all the gold.
it was all fenced off.
Well, was that all the tailings and that?
It was what?
Was that all the tailings, like all the waste of or the actual gold itself?
It was
No, real
it was
It was in a seam.
in a seam, and they had it fenced off. You weren't, and the light shining on it. Mark you, a lot of it was painted on, I suppose, or processed
Oh,
on.
I think it was the real stuff.
But we spent a good long day, one day, going around all the open cast mines.
Oh, huge big. We've got photos of all them somewhere. I don't know where they all are, but they're here somewhere.
So when was this?
That was out of Kalgoorlie. Went on
When was
a
it?
day trip. Oh, I don't know how many years ago.
Have to get the passport out now.
Oh, well, you wouldn't know because, well, it must be 15 or 16 years ago because we've been in here, what, about 13 years, 12 years this Christmas or something. There's that chap, he's back up again and he's just walking across, he's not carrying it, eh? Might have been turning or something. Now we'll watch it. The hose is there. Yeah, there you are, he is. He is standing last year. Is that water or is it? You won't see the hose of water, is it?
It is water.
Yeah, it's water. You can see the water go down the thing.
He's rinsing something off.
He better be careful he doesn't slip.
Well, there might have been skyrockets or something put.
It's going down the other side now.
Oh, there were a lot of fireworks last night.
Yeah,
Here? Oh.
they're everywhere. Fred might be cleaning out, just for sure how they're cleaning out. They were good stand of fireworks went up from a section, not 2 doors up from us, away out over.
But there was some here after we went to
Oh
bed.
yeah, banging and crashing.
Oh,
John.
bang.
Bit of a wind too.
Yeah.
Well, the neighbours, our immediate neighbours, had a good.
Oh,
The Slamans, they let off quite a lot and they were quite good. But there were more down where we were the previous night than there were on Guy Fawkes night.
Yeah.
People were letting them off in broad daylight for some odd reason.
oh, some pretty ones out here. And the ones that whistle. See the ones that the whistling one, where they whistling?
Yeah, when they
Yeah,
got there and
there's
they
that
turned in
chappy.
circles doing all
There's that
sorts of-
chappy up there again.
Oh, I can't see. I'm not going to get up on there.
He's right over the top of it, middle of our clothesline. Now he's walking along by the chimney.
Is he squirting water anywhere?
Well, yeah, there's something coming out. He's doing the other side. Fred, the other side of Fred, he's going up and down there.
Sometimes tiles, roof tiles, crack and break just through contraction, expansion.
They'd hardly be going to paint it again, because remember they did put stuff on it one time, but they'd hardly be doing that again. Oh no, not giving it a dusting, but you know, once now that the trees and pollen is all gone, I suppose. There's nothing else I can think of.
Well, I'll wrap that up then.
What? Oh, we're not. Have we finished the interview?
Unless you've got anything else to say.
Oh, there's a lot of little minor things, I suppose, we could talk about where we've been, what we've done.
Well, he had 4 years in Fiji.
They've got that, haven't you?
We have got that recorded.
Mm.
It must be getting. I
Yes,
wonder-
we've been around a bit, I suppose.
There's only one curse in life now, is getting old.
Getting old and grey.
Oh yeah, I'm sick with it.
Aches and pains. Oh, better off than lots of people, I suppose. Can't know. Yes, it is cleaning it, isn't it? Whatever he's doing. You can see it's coming lighter, or else it's the water that's making it look lighter.
It's probably the angle of the sunlight, I'd say.
I know, it must be water all coming down, because look at it now. It's all light colour, isn't it? And the rest of the roof's dark.
I'd say some of the funny things that have happened. One good funny thing was having the 2 pigs in at Manapori, and the Parks Board used to come up and they couldn't
And
work
we
out.
used to have to walk away.
They knew there was something going on. But I brought the 2 pigs in, they're only piglets. I brought them in a couple of sacks in the boat. And Russell had the pen and everything already made up, you know.
How do they ever stayed in that Ian
The sandflies were their biggest enemy,
Ah,
the pigs. The
it's the
sandflies used
same-
to give the
the
pigs
sandflies
behind
were
the ears and that. That was one of the funny things. The serious thing was that the fire brigade at Chertsey Crossing when it hit the express. That was that fuel tanker. That was a serious thing that people just didn't realise how close they were to getting blown up. I've had some wonderful times out at sea with Barry Barber and Murray Roger. Made some,
Oh, even in your own wee boat. You
yeah,
slept on it way down
I used to
the
sleep on it down Doubtful Sound and that. But, and a guy that was very, very good to Gene and I, Kevin McComb, the electrician from Karatani. He lived in Waikowai, but terrific man, really. But we used to get some wonderful catches in the boats in those days, even catch the odd groper. Yeah.
Yes, definitely water.
Caught some good fish the other day. We enjoyed them, they were good. The red cod and blue cod.
Have you had that fish yet?
Yes, yes, we have.
Did Sister Mary get any?
Um,
Been around.
no, not since we've had them, but we've kept plenty for her.
Good.
Yeah, there was a
And
time.
you got to feed yourself, did you?
Oh yeah, very very hearty feed.
Yeah, I put.
I don't think your mother's keen on fish, is she?
Well, Mum enjoys the batter, but no. Overall, the Mum's side of the family isn't overly seafood
They're
mad.
not fish pot types.
No, not really. But they like your batter recipe. Yeah.
Well, the whole thing.
Is that right?
The whole thing is probably put a lot of Catholics off. They weren't allowed meat on a Friday. Catholics.
Did you know that?
Oh, I knew. I thought they had. I thought there was an Ash Wednesday, but I never knew
No,
that.
they weren't allowed.
Meatless Friday.
Yes, they weren't allowed meat on a Friday, and
That was an air day in the old days.
yes, I mean I don't know what they do now, but I know they used to. And I can remember my cousin. He used to stay at our place when we were kids, and he'd be a second cousin. His mother was my cousin, and she married a Catholic, and she turned, Catholic for him. And anyway, Brian, he was only a wee fellow, and he used to spend our holidays at our place, and I can remember Mum forgot and gave him fish. Didn't have fish on a Friday, and Brian realised later, and you had to go to the priest and confess. And I think Mum had taken him down to the Catholic Church, like Kiwi, to confess because he'd eaten fish. He didn't have fish on the Friday, he'd eaten meat. And he was a Catholic priest for 15 years.
Heck of a
and then
wonderful guy.
he chucked it and he married. The only reason he was allowed to marry was that the lady he married had been married and divorced, and when she was married, she was a Catholic, but she hadn't married in the Catholic Church. And I think that was the only reason Brian was allowed to marry her. And
He's a very
she
nice
had a
guy.
couple.
He lives in London.
Yes, he'd be about 74, I suppose, Brian now. His
Josephine.
sisters.
What's his
He's got
wife's
two
name?
sisters in town.
Josephine, wasn't it?
Yeah, Josephine. She was an Austrian. Ken stayed
Wonderful
with me.
woman. Great
Yeah.
dear.
And then Ken went with Josephine's daughter, and Ken went and stayed in Austria with Josephine's sister, and Ken went and learned to ski in Austria.
And
Well,
you
we-
asked Ian about, he got filled in over there too, with an old chucker with a horse and cart that must
Oh,
have
yeah, that
had
was
a
nice.
legal wine or something on it. And Ken gave him a hand to load up or do something or other. This was in Austria, was it?
Yeah, somewhere over there.
And anyway, he thought he better shout for Ken, and that was the finish of that lot. You can ask Ken on the quiet about that.
Oh well.
Oh, and that, unless that's just still with the wet, it's a different colour altogether, isn't it? You ever look to it before you should nearly finish.
He'll have dope mixed in with that. I'll go put the chug on.
Might be,
Oh, there'd be mail out there, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'd let myself into that butt.
you going up the toilet on your way?
I'll have to, yes.
Well, I'll get you to take your shirt.
Well, I'll wrap that up now. It's
Yeah,
been good talking.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could put some tail pieces onto there and think of things.
If you think of anything, I'll come.
You're not going away now, are you?
Oh, yeah, I am. I've just finished there.
Well, do you want a cup of tea or something?
No, I'm good as gold.
There's lemonade open there.
I'll just.
We used to have some good times at a Karatani in the old crib. May, Kai and May's brother, well, they're all dead now, Kai and May's still alive, but they used to come out and stay at our crib a lot. And we cooked Christmas dinner one day. We cooked the turkey outside, I don't know. We must have had something outside the ground, and they were all getting full and they were walking along concrete edge. We got photos all taken there. We used to have some great times out at the old crib. They used to go out there a lot when we were either up at the hydro lakes or else we were at Manapori. You know, we pulled the old crib down after we built the new house. No, apart from that, can't think of anything else you could finish it off.
It's been good talking to you. Thank you.
Yes, see what man
Well,
out there.
Concludes today's interview with Jean and George Chilton. Today is November the 7th, 2005. As you can see, it's a beautiful day out there with clear views and vistas. All round visibility, pretty beautiful.
Supposed to be 20 today.
Yep.